I'm really excited to share my story with you because it's very relatable. We all do the same thing. You know, we're all in service to someone or something. So I'm going to start off by bragging, okay? I'm going to start off by listing some facts. Oh, hi. Been here 37 years, have been the head coach 29 years. My last competition as a head coach was last Saturday. Have earned 7 national championships. Bunch of conference championships and all that. Am in the UCLA Athletic Hall of Fame and was voted the Pac-12 Coach of the Century 2 years ago. I know, cool. So the most fun fact, though, I'm telling you all that and I'm bragging because the most fun fact, which I think you've already been told, is I've never done gymnastics. Cool, right? I was a ballet dancer. So the whole book that you all got is about how did a ballerina become one of the most successful coaches in athletics. I didn't grow up in this world. I was 22 years old. It was 1982. I had, right out of high school, danced professionally. I was in Washington, D.C. I was getting ready to start my first season with Washington, D.C. Ballet. And I heard that UCLA needed a dance coach for their gymnastics team. So, like lesson number 1, I wasn't afraid to pick up the phone and ask. I found out who the head coach was, found out his number, called him up, said I've had 17 years of classical ballet training, here you need a dance coach, what do you think? And he said, I don't have money for a salary, but I can give you a full scholarship. And I hadn't gone to school. I was like, yes. So that quickly I decided to go back to DC, pack up all my stuff, retire from dancing, and come out to UCLA. It was fall 1982, and I've been here ever since. And all of that stuff that I mentioned, all of the accolades, all of the bragging, none of that would have happened. I wouldn't be standing here. I wouldn't have had this amazing career had I been too afraid to pick up the phone and make the ask. I know you're going like this, right? Okay. So it's super important to know how to ask. You guys live it daily. It's super important to know how to nudge without being annoying. And then it's super important to know when to just drop it. Because you can always come back and nudge. That's in the book, chapter something. So I was here, I had a glorious time in the world of gymnastics, not knowing what the heck I was doing, but teaching them instead of just doing like this, it's like peel like a banana and teaching them all that good stuff. And in 1990, I was called into the athletic director's office, and they said, we're going to make a change with our head coach, even though we had finished second in the country the year before. We're going to make a change, and we want you to be the new head coach. That's what I did. Supposedly, I was catatonic for like 30 seconds, and then I laughed out loud, and I said, you understand I don't know the first thing about gymnastics. And she said, I like how you have worked with the student athletes. I've noticed how you are tough but compassionate with them. And I trust you will figure the rest out. And that's all I got. So I said, okay, I'll go do that. So I did what I thought was prudent. And I think that you would probably think the same thing. I started studying coaches because I didn't grow up in the world of athletics. I didn't grow up with this, we gotta beat you, win at all cost, you know, bragging rights, haha, we beat you. You don't do any of that in dance. My problem was who I studied. I studied Bobby Knight. Because in my mind, a coach was tough-minded, tough-talking, relentless, badass, right? And I grew up on stage. I could do that. So I acted. And we did horribly. We finished dead last at the national championships. So I said, well, I need to act better. So I studied harder, and I learned things like, go harder, go home. And when you walk away and you turn and do that, it's very effective. Winners make adjustments and losers make excuses. Oh, I learned like hundreds of them. We did even worse. We didn't even make it to the national championships. So true story, I was on my way to resign and to tell the athletic director, haha, I told you so, I suck at this job. And I was in our student store, Ackerman Union, and I happened upon one of Coach Wooden's books. And as I opened it opened up to his definition of success. And I read it. It said, success is peace of mind, which is a direct result in knowing you've done the best to become the best you're capable of becoming. And I kept reading, because he'd won 10 championships in 12 years. He was the most hailed coach in the country of any sport. Where does he talk about winning? We are coaches. I am a coach. I'm hired to win. My success is determined upon winning. So I read his definition again, and again, and again, because I didn't get it. And by about the 20th time, that word you became really big and really bold. And I had the biggest aha moment of my life. Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result in knowing you have done your best. I had been trying to be somebody else. And in life, in business, in family relations, you name it, whenever you try to be somebody else, you will always be a second-rate them. Trust me, I coach 18 to 22-year-old girls. They all want to be the 6th Kardashian. And the worst part about trying to be somebody else is it prevents you from becoming a first-rate you. So I didn't resign. I went back to my office, and I thought, okay, forget trying to be Bobby Knight. That failed miserably. What do I bring to the table? I've had 17 years of classical ballet training. I coach gymnasts. I know how to work hard, they work hard. I know how to work through pain, they have to work through pain. I know what it's like to have to be in a leotard, especially going through puberty. That's no fun. They do that. I know what it's like to be body shamed. They go through that. I know about disordered eating. They go through that. Most of all, I knew what it was like to be calm and confident as I was waiting in the wings to go on stage. And it always shocked me, because in the wings, on both sides of the stage, there were buckets for the dancers that were so nervous to throw up in before they went on stage. I never understood that. I'm like, if you're that nervous, then go prepare better, either mentally or physically. So I thought about it, I thought, our student athletes, our gymnasts, they're waiting in the wings as when they're standing there in their leotards, all sweaty and mouth is dry, waiting for the judge to salute them before they get up on the equipment. That's their wings. I knew at that moment I could train them to be prepared for that moment, to be calm, confident, and excited. And I could do that better than any other coach in the country. All I had to do was hire coaches to do everything I didn't know how to do, which was the actual gymnastics part, which is fine. There's lots of people out there that can teach flipping and twisting. So I started doing me. And because I'm at UCLA and we can recruit some of the best talent in the world, we started winning. And I'll never forget, a few years later, one of my seniors came to me and she said, Miss Val, you have finally become a leader worth following because you are being authentic and true to who you are. And then she went on to say, and when you make mistakes, it's okay, because I know they're coming from a proper intention. So I scrubbed trying to be somebody else. I just kept doing me, kept honing my philosophies. I didn't really care about bragging rights, as we were just told. I cared about the person. And it's like, I'm sure, have you guys heard of Simon Sinek, Find Your Why? It's so important in life because the why in gymnastics usually is bragging rights. How many billions of dollars is spent each year on being able to say in sports, haha, we beat you. From Pee Wee football to the Olympic Games to World Cup soccer to NCAA, it's all about bragging rights. That didn't resonate with me. So in order for me to do this job, I had to figure out my why. And that was very clear to me. Athletics is one of the greatest venues to learn the really tough life lessons. I'm going to develop champions in life through the sport of gymnastics. And if I do that well enough, that will translate to the competition floor. And it did. So, fast forward a few years, it's 1998. I had just married our defensive coordinator in football. I had never met Coach Wooden, and my husband had known Coach Wooden. So I asked my husband to invite Coach Wooden over for dinner because I figured my husband grew up sharecropping in Texas. Coach Wooden grew up farming in Martinsville, Indiana. They could talk about farming and crops and tractors and stuff if they wanted to. It was cool. And I said, let's invite Coach Wooden over for dinner. My husband, the ultimate Southern gentleman, said, my love, Coach Wooden has got more invitations than he knows what to do with. The worst thing and the last thing he needs is another obligation. And I said, he can say no, just like I did when I called in 1982, when I called the head coach to ask if they needed a dance coach. He could have said no. So the next night my husband came home and I asked again. And the next night he came home and I asked again. Okay, 3 weeks went by of me asking every single night. Yes, I nagged. Finally, to shut me up, he called Coach Wooden. And he said, Coach, it's Bobby Field, and I just don't know if you know, but I married our women's gymnastics coach. And Coach said, oh, Bobby, I know all about Miss Val. And Bobby said, well, Coach, you know, we would love to have you over for dinner, but I know you've got more on your calendar than you know what to do with. The last thing you need is another obligation. And Coach Wooden said, Bobby, I don't mean to interrupt you, but are you asking me to dinner? Or are you telling me all the reasons you don't want me to come? Classic John Wooden. So Coach came over for dinner. He was 80 at the time. We had dinner about 5:30 because I figured that's when octogenarians eat. And he stayed till about 11:30. I think I'm one of the only humans on the planet that ever kicked Coach Wooden out of their home. And that started a relationship that was extremely close between my husband, myself, and Coach and his family. We became like family. We were with Coach until he died in our hospital here, 3 months shy of his 100th birthday. Had that relationship, I ended up having Coach Wooden, Coach John Wooden, as my mentor for close to 20 years. That relationship would have never, ever happened had I been too shy to make the call and to make the ask. So, I'm chugging along, doing Miss Val, coaching, winning championships, developing champions, developing my philosophy and my foundation about champions being resilient, champions enjoying the suck, champions learning how to go through every single day, making every day a masterpiece, as Coach Wooden would say. And on June 9th, 2014, I had to start walking the walk. I got the call that a lot of us dread from my doctor, and she said, got some not such great news. You have a very aggressive form of breast cancer, and I need to see you as soon as possible. And I hung up the phone and my world stopped. Because the last time, and the only time I had dealt with any cancer in my family was 20 years prior. My mother had died a horrific, painful death. So I immediately went into battle mode. And in that moment, I heard very, very clearly, be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. And whether you call this cosmic energy or the universe, however you translate that, I translated it that I was hearing from God, be anxious for nothing and grateful for all things. I didn't know how I was not going to be anxious. I had just gotten diagnosed with a potentially fatal disease. So I went home, I told my husband about the breast cancer, and I told him about hearing, be anxious for nothing and be grateful for all things. And he said, well, that's from the Bible. Well, I had never read the Bible. So I went over and found the Bible and looked it up. And sure enough, in Philippians it says, be anxious for nothing, and paraphrased, and grateful for all things. I had heard this before I ever read it. And just like everything in life, I could choose whether to obey or not. I chose to obey. I didn't know how I was going to obey. And I went to my doctor's the very next day, and she said, you have gone from having the absolute worst type of breast cancer to the best. Had you gotten diagnosed a mere 10 years earlier, we had absolutely nothing for you. And if you choose, that word again, if you choose to get chemotherapy for a year, I know it's going to work. At that second, I got it. I understood how I was going to obey the commandment. I didn't have to get chemotherapy. I got to get chemotherapy because I lived at a time that has the chemo. And I live in a country that has the chemo. Changing that one word, have to get, has changed everything about my life since that day 4 years ago. To the point where I walked out and was so excited to start going to chemotherapy. I called it my chemo spa, because a spa is someplace you go to feel better. And when I would come and talk to my student athletes about it, and they would say, Miss Val, you don't have to put on such a happy face. I mean, you've got breast cancer and you're going to chemotherapy. I said, I get to go to chemotherapy because I actually live at the time that has it. And I remember one day, a few days later, one of my student athletes wanted to meet with me the very next day, and I said, I can't. I gotta go to my chemo spa. And I said, my chemo spas really get in the way of my days. And she said, Miss Val, but it's giving you a lot more days. So, going to my chemo spa, I decided to really make it my spa. And I decided to have it be my me time. So I started working on my bucket list. Because when you get hit with something tragic in life, whether it's you personally or your family or a friend, you can't help but get that life message that we all have an expiration date. I just didn't know when mine was. I knew I wasn't going to die from this breast cancer, but I could get hit by a truck. The truth is, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. So I decided I was not going to waste one moment of any day of the rest of my life. So in my chemo spa, I started writing the book, which I was going to put off writing until after I retired. And in the chemo spa, I started developing my treatment in a deck for an urban nutcracker I want to produce. And in my chemo spa, I started producing a Broadway show called Trash, about the environment. I actually looked forward to going to my chemo spa, because it was my time. As I was writing the book, I came across another story about Coach Wooden that I put in the book. And I'm going to share it with you, because it's the title of the book, how the title of the book came to be. The last few years I was with Coach Wooden, almost every single time I was with him, someone would come up and say, Coach, you've lived an impeccable life. Do you have any regrets? And he would always look at them and his blue eyes would get a little misty. And he would say, you know what, my wife Nellie, she loved to dance. And I've never been a good dancer, and I've always been very shy. And had I danced with my wife, I know now people wouldn't have been making fun of me. They would have seen two people in love dancing. If I had it to do all over again, I would dance with my wife. So whatever that metaphor for you is for dance, I implore you not to waste one more day owning your dance. It's that thing that makes your heart shine. Don't wait one more day to dance, whatever that means to you. And as I always tell our student athletes, and we talk about treating them as people, individual, unique people, I want to leave you with just one obvious thing. In the history of man, there has never been another you. And after you die, there will never be another you. You were born unique for a reason, with a purpose. And that light that is in you, it's not the same as it is in anybody else that's ever walked the face of the earth. So every day, do whatever makes that light bigger and brighter. Fuel your light, and then own it. As I owned being a ballerina, coaching one of the greatest athletic programs in the country. That's why I wear dresses and high heels on the competition floor. Because I'm doing me. And then once you rev up that light inside of you and you own it, you share it with as many people as you possibly can. And that's how you make every day of your life blossom in spectacolor. Thank you.